I was still unconscious on an operating table when my 10-year-old son called 911 from the hospital cafe. Not because my surgery had failed. Not because there was a fire. Not because a stranger had taken him. He called because my parents had left him alone with his two little sisters while they drove across town to watch my older sister accept an award for designing safe rooms for children. And the part that still makes my hands shake is this. My youngest daughter was gasping for air. Her emergency inhaler was not in her backpack. It was in my mother's purse, beside a lipstick, a compact mirror, and a glossy program that read, "The Veil Design Awards. Rooms that hold them." My son did not know the hospital address. He did not know what floor he was on. He did not know which adult was supposed to help him. Because every adult who had promised me they would stay had walked away. So Caleb looked down at the paper visitor wristband wrapped around his small wrist and read the only information he had. "My mom's name is Nora Bennett," he told the dispatcher. "She's in surgery. I have her room number. I don't know where my grandparents went. My little sister can't breathe." The dispatcher asked him, "Are you inside the hospital?" And my child answered with a sentence no child should ever have to say. "Yes. But nobody knows we're alone." I did not hear that call until hours later. When I woke up, my throat felt like sandpaper. A monitor beeped beside me. Something tugged at my arm. I tried to move, and pain tore through my abdomen so sharply I made a sound before I could stop myself. A nurse leaned over me. "Miss Bennett, don't move. You're out of surgery. You're safe." Safe. That was the word she used. Safe. I blinked through the fog of anesthesia, and one thought cut through everything. My children. Where are my kids? The nurse's face changed. It was small. A flicker. But I had spent my whole life reading faces that did not want to tell me the truth. A woman I had never seen before stepped into the room. She wore a navy cardigan and had a badge clipped to her chest. Behind her stood a hospital security officer. My heart started racing so hard the monitor began beeping faster. "No," I whispered. "Tell me where my children are." "My name is Dana," the woman said. "I'm with Hospital Social Services. Your children are safe now." Now. That one word cracked something open inside me. "What do you mean now?" "Your son Caleb called emergency services from the hospital cafe this evening." I stared at her. "That's impossible." "My parents were with them." Silence. "My parents were with them," I said again. "Richard and Elaine Bennett. They came before surgery. They promised. They were supposed to stay until I woke up." Dana's voice softened. "They left the hospital, Miss Bennett." The room tilted. "No. My youngest has asthma." The nurse looked down. My body went cold. "Sophie?" "She's stable," Dana said quickly. "She had an asthma episode. She received oxygen. She's being monitored." I tried to sit up. Pain ripped through me again, but I did not care. My baby couldn't breathe. "I know." "My parents knew she has asthma." "I know." "Where was her inhaler?" No one answered fast enough. That was how I knew. Dana's eyes moved to the nurse, then back to me. "The emergency inhaler was later found in your mother's purse when she returned." My mother's purse. Elaine Bennett's cream leather purse. The one she saved for important events. The one she always said was for careful hands. My daughter's breath had been in that purse. "What happened?" I asked. Dana took a breath. "Your parents brought the children to the cafe. They purchased food for them. According to staff, they told Caleb they would be back shortly. After about 90 minutes, Sophie began having trouble breathing. Caleb attempted to call your parents. They did not answer. He called 911. "He's 10. I know. He shouldn't have had to do that." "No," Dana said. "He shouldn't have." "Where did they go?" I asked. Dana hesitated. "Tell me." "They were attending an event downtown." "What event?" "The Veil Design Awards." At first, the name meant nothing. Then it came back. My older sister. Celeste. Her big night. Her nomination. Her collection. Rooms that hold them. Celeste had built her career around designing gentle, beautiful spaces for children. Rounded furniture. Soft lighting. Reading corners. Rooms meant to make children feel held. And while she stood on a stage accepting applause for that work, my 3 children had been abandoned under fluorescent lights in a hospital cafe. I started laughing. Not because it was funny, because my mind could not find a human response large enough. "Did my parents know Caleb called 911 before they came back?" I asked. Dana's face told me before her mouth did. "Yes." "How long?" Based on the call records we have so far, your father was contacted shortly after hospital staff reached the children. He and your mother returned approximately 40 minutes later. 40 minutes. My daughter had been given oxygen. My son had been questioned by security. My middle child had vomited from crying. And my parents had taken 40 minutes to come back from an awards ceremony. The door opened. Mia came first, her 7-year-old face swollen from crying. Sophie was in a wheelchair with a blanket around her shoulders and an oxygen tube under her nose. Caleb stood behind them, pale and stiff, his paper wristband wrinkled around his wrist. I reached out with the hand that did not have an IV. Mia ran to me but stopped inches from the bed, scared of hurting me. Sophie whispered, "Mommy," and began to cry. But Caleb did not move. He looked at me like he was waiting to be told whether he had done the right thing. "Caleb," I whispered. His chin trembled. "I didn't leave them," he said. "I promise. I stayed right there." Something inside me broke. I lifted my hand. "Come here." He came slowly. "I tried to be good," he whispered. I pulled him as close as my body would allow. "You were good," I said. "You were brave. But you were never supposed to be the grown-up." He finally cried then. Not loudly. Just one broken breath against my hospital gown. And while I held my son, I looked past his shoulder and saw my parents standing at the end of the hall. My mother still had her hair pinned for the awards ceremony. My father was still wearing his black suit. And on my mother's coat was a gold guest badge from the Veil Design Awards. They looked embarrassed. Not destroyed. Not ashamed. Embarrassed. That was when I understood they had not come back because they realized they were wrong. They had come back because my son had made their wrongness visible. And for people like my parents, that was the only unforgivable thing. 24 hours before my son called 911, I was standing barefoot in my kitchen, packing 3 small backpacks. Caleb's had his tablet, headphones, granola bars, a book about space, and the blue hoodie he wore when hospital air conditioning made him shiver. Mia's had crayons, a stuffed rabbit named Button, apple slices, and the tiny notebook where she wrote questions she was too shy to ask out loud. Sophie's had a blanket, picture books, extra socks, and a plastic pouch labeled in thick black marker. Sophie asthma, emergency inhaler inside. I wrote it twice. Once on the pouch, once on the front pocket. I had learned to prepare for other people's carelessness the way some people prepare for storms. That morning my surgeon told me we could not postpone. A mass that had been, probably nothing, had become something that needed to come out immediately. He spoke calmly, but I heard the words underneath. Risk. Bleeding. Complications. Consent forms. I signed everything with a hand that barely shook, because mothers do not get to collapse at the first sign of fear. We pack snacks. We charge tablets. We explain things gently to children who watch our faces too carefully. Caleb stood in the hallway when I ended the call. "Is it bad?" he asked. "It's serious," I said, "but the doctors know what they're doing." He nodded. Then he looked at the backpacks. "Are Grandma and Grandpa coming?" That question hurt more than the diagnosis. "Yes," I said. He did not look relieved. I heard what he did not say. He did not ask because he trusted them. He asked because he remembered. He remembered his 7th birthday, when my parents promised to come before the candles and arrived after the cake was already cut because Celeste needed help choosing fabric samples. He remembered Mia's winter recital, when 2 empty seats stayed empty until the final song. He remembered the night Sophie had a mild asthma flare, and my mother told me over the phone, at least it wasn't serious, as if fear only counted when it left paperwork behind. Children collect adult absence in quiet places. They learn who to stop expecting before they have the words for disappointment. So when Caleb asked, "Are Grandma and Grandpa coming?" what he really meant was, "Will they stay this time?" My parents, Richard and Elaine Bennett, had spent my entire life teaching me that love was available in 2 forms: emergency leftovers and public display. In public, they were proud parents. In private, I was the daughter who could wait. Celeste, my older sister, was the daughter who could not. If Celeste was nervous, everyone rearranged their schedules. If Celeste wanted something, it became a family mission. Her art shows, interviews, dress fittings, and heartbreaks were treated like family emergencies. I was expected to understand. That was my role. Understanding was the tax I paid to stay in the family. When I became a mother, I promised myself I would not pass that tax down to my children. But old patterns wait at the edges of crisis. So when the hospital said I needed surgery the next day, and I had no one else who could stay with the children for that many hours, I called my mother. She answered on the fourth ring. Nora, can I call you back? Celeste is trying on the dress for tomorrow night. Tomorrow night. The Veil Design Awards. For months, my parents had talked about little else. Celeste had been nominated for a major design award for her collection, Rooms That Hold Them, a series of children's rooms, meant to support emotional safety after trauma. The irony had not hit me yet. Back then, it was just another Celeste moment orbiting above all our lives. Mom, I said, I need surgery tomorrow. There was a pause. What kind of surgery? I explained briefly. I left out the worst possibilities, because I did not have the energy to comfort her through my fear. Oh, Nora, she said. Tomorrow? Yes. But tomorrow is Celeste's ceremony. There it was. Not. Are you scared? Not. What do you need? But, tomorrow is Celeste's ceremony. I know, I said. I'm sorry. I hated that I said sorry. I wouldn't ask if I had another option, I continued. I just need you and Dad to stay with the kids until I wake up. You don't have to do anything else. They'll have food, books, chargers, everything. My mother exhaled. Then her voice softened into the tone she used when she wanted to sound like a mother. Of course, sweetheart. For once, let us be there. For once. Even her comfort carried evidence. The next afternoon, my parents arrived at the hospital dressed too nicely for a surgical waiting room. My father wore a pressed shirt under his coat. My mother's hair was set in soft waves. She had event makeup on. I noticed. I said nothing. Celeste texted me once that morning. Hope surgery goes smoothly. Big day here too. I stared at the message for longer than it deserved. Big day here too. As if my body being opened on an operating table, and her accepting an award belonged in the same category. My children sat beside me in pre-op. Caleb had his backpack between his feet. Mia held Button under her chin. Sophie sat on my lap until a nurse told her gently that Mommy's IV line needed space. My mother kissed each child on the forehead. We'll take good care of you, she said. Caleb looked up at her. You won't leave us, right? My mother laughed softly, like the question offended her. Not for a second. The nurse came with visitor bands. She wrapped one around my mother's wrist, one around my father's, and one around Caleb's because he wanted to feel official. The nurse explained that it connected him to my room and recovery area. I bent down and kissed the paper band on his wrist. This means you belong here with me, I told him. He smiled for the first time all day. Then the surgical team came. The world narrowed to wheels, lights, masks, signatures, instructions. I hugged Mia and told her Button was in charge until I came back. I kissed Sophie's curls and reminded her that her inhaler pouch was in her backpack. I touched Caleb's cheek. You don't have to take care of everyone, I said. He nodded. But now I know he did not believe me. My mother squeezed my hand. Don't worry, she said. We have them. Those were the last words I heard before they wheeled me away. We have them. I carried those words into anesthesia like a prayer. Behind me the doors closed. And outside those doors, my mother's phone lit up. A message from Celeste. Mom, they moved my category earlier. I need you and Dad here before the cameras start. Please, this matters. My mother looked at the message, then at my children, then at the hallway leading down to the cafe. She did not choose in a dramatic way. That is what makes it worse. She simply adjusted the strap of her cream leather purse and said, Kids, let's get something to eat. Just like that, the promise began to die. The hospital cafe was on the first floor, tucked behind the gift shop. My parents chose a table near the back. Caleb sat with his back to the wall because he liked to see exits. Mia sat beside him with Button in her lap. Sophie climbed onto the chair next to Mia, already tired from the long day. My father bought them food. A muffin for Caleb. Apple juice for Mia. A small carton of milk and a banana for Sophie. Then my mother opened Sophie's backpack. Caleb watched. What are you looking for? He asked. Just checking, my mother said. She pulled out the plastic pouch. Sophie asthma emergency inhaler inside. Caleb reached for it. Mom said that stays with Sophie. My mother smiled in that thin way adults smile when a child has said something true but inconvenient. I know, sweetheart. I'll keep it safe so it doesn't get lost. Sophie needs it sometimes. And I'll be right here. She put the pouch into her cream leather purse. The purse she would later carry into the Veil Design Awards. The purse that would sit under a chair while my sister spoke about children feeling within reach of love. My father glanced at his watch. We'll be back in a few minutes, he said. Caleb frowned. Where are you going? Just upstairs, my mother lied. We need to check on something. Can we come? No, honey. Your mother needs quiet. Stay right here. Mia's eyes widened. Is mommy awake? Not yet. Then why can't we go near her? Because hospitals have rules. That was enough for Mia. But Caleb looked down at his visitor wristband. The nurse said this gets us to mom's room. Elaine leaned close. Caleb, your mother is counting on you to be mature. Don't make this harder for her. That sentence did exactly what it was designed to do. It put the weight of my peace on my son's shoulders. My mother touched Caleb's hair. Be a big boy. Watch your sisters. We'll be right back. Then they walked away. Not quickly. Not guiltily. They walked like people leaving a table at a restaurant to take a call. I do not think they told themselves they were abandoning children. That would have required honesty. They told themselves it was one quick stop. One photograph. One speech. One harmless exception. They told themselves Caleb was mature. Mia was quiet. Sophie looked fine, and the hospital was safe enough to make their promise flexible. That was how they had always betrayed me too. Not with one monstrous decision, but with 100 small permissions they gave themselves whenever Celeste needed the room. For the first 15 minutes, nothing happened. The cafe was busy in that careless, ordinary way public places can be busy. Nurses came through for coffee. Visitors carried trays. A man argued softly into his phone near the window. Everyone saw the children, but no one really looked. 3 kids at a table inside a hospital did not seem like an emergency. People assumed an adult was nearby, in line, in the restroom, only a few steps away. That is how danger hides sometimes. Not in darkness, but in everyone's assumption that someone else is watching. Mia colored in her notebook. Sophie picked at her banana. Caleb kept glancing toward the hallway, trying to believe adults did what they said they would do. At 20 minutes, Mia asked, "Where are they?" "Maybe upstairs," Caleb said. At 35 minutes, Sophie said she was tired. Caleb gave her his hoodie and helped her put it on backward, making Mia laugh for a few seconds. At 50 minutes, Mia spilled apple juice and began to cry like the spill had broken something much bigger than a drink. "It's okay," Caleb whispered, cleaning it with napkins. "Mom will wake up soon." At 1 hour and 10 minutes, Sophie started coughing. Caleb knew the difference between an ordinary cough and Sophie's asthma cough. Ordinary coughs annoyed her. Asthma coughs scared her before they scared anyone else. Her shoulders lifted too high. Her eyes searched faces, as if someone else might know how to open the air for her. "Slow breaths," Caleb said, trying to sound like me. "In through your nose. Out like candles." Sophie tried. Her little mouth trembled. Mia began whispering, "Mommy, mommy, mommy," into Button's fur. Caleb dug through the backpack again. Books hit the floor. Socks. The blanket. The plastic spoon from the cafe tray. No emergency pouch. He found the regular inhaler and shook it the way he had seen me do. It felt too light. "It still has some," he lied. He helped Sophie take one puff, then another. For a few seconds, her breathing eased. Caleb's whole body loosened. Then the wheeze came back thinner and higher, like a door closing somewhere inside her chest. He called my mother. No answer. He called my father. The call was declined. That detail would later become one of the small, ugly facts my family could not talk their way around. My father had not missed the call. He had rejected it. Across town, a photographer was taking pictures of my parents beside Celeste's installation. The installation was a full-scale mock-up of a child's bedroom. Warm wood, rounded shelves, soft walls, a reading nook shaped like an embrace. On the wall above the miniature bed were the words, "Rooms that hold them." My sister stood under those words in a silver dress, glowing. My mother's phone buzzed in her purse. Caleb calling. She silenced it. Back in the cafe, Sophie's lips had lost color. Caleb stood up, then froze. If he went for help, he would have to leave Mia and Sophie. If he stayed, Sophie might get worse. Mia grabbed his sleeve. "Don't leave." "I'm not leaving." Sophie whispered. "Caleb." He turned. "I can't breathe." That was when my son stopped waiting for permission. He took the old emergency phone my mother had tossed onto the table with the snacks, the one she said was just in case, already down to 12% battery, and dialed 911. When the dispatcher answered, Caleb's voice shook so badly he had to repeat himself. "My mom is in surgery. My grandparents left. My little sister can't breathe." The dispatcher asked for the address. I don't know. What building are you in? A hospital. Which hospital? Caleb looked around. Panic rose in his throat. Hospitals have signs everywhere until you need one, and then all the letters become shapes. He looked down at his wrist. The paper visitor band. He held it close to his face. It says North Valley Medical Center. Nora Bennett. Surgery wing. Recovery room. 412. I'm Caleb. I'm her son. You're doing great, Caleb, the dispatcher said. Are you with your sister now? Yes. How old is she? 4. Is there an inhaler? My grandma took the other one. The one here is almost empty. There was a pause. Caleb, can you see any hospital staff? I'm scared to leave my other sister alone. I understand. I'm going to send help to you. I'm already in a hospital, Caleb said, confusion breaking through his fear. But nobody knows we're alone. Within minutes, security reached the cafe, then a nurse, then another nurse. Sophie was lifted into a wheelchair and rushed toward treatment. Mia screamed when they moved her. Caleb ran beside them until someone told him to slow down. He kept repeating, "My mom is in surgery. Don't tell her until she wakes up. She'll be scared." That was my son, abandoned by adults, still trying to protect me. And across town, applause filled a ballroom. Celeste Bennett was announced as the winner of the Veil Design Award for Rooms That Hold Them. My parents rose to their feet. My mother cried. My father clapped. Their phones buzzed again and again from the hospital. And for 10 more minutes, they did not leave. The ballroom at the Veil Design Awards was built to make people feel important. Gold light, white tablecloths, glass trophies on black velvet, screens showing elegant footage of the nominated collections. Celeste's video opened with a child's hand touching a rounded wooden shelf, then a little girl curled into a reading nook, then sunlight over pale green walls. Then Celeste's voice, soft and practiced. A child's room should not simply contain them. It should remind them they are not alone. I saw that video later online. I had to pause it there, because while she said that, my children were alone. My parents sat near the stage, close enough to be seen in reaction shots. Celeste had built her brand on empathy. She spoke about trauma-informed spaces, safety, belonging, and gentle design until people believed she carried those values in her bones. But values are not what you say under good lighting. Values are what you do when no one is watching, and a child needs help. Marion Vale watched from the center table. She was older, with silver hair pulled into a low knot, and a face that looked both kind and impossible to fool. Years earlier, Marion had lost a child in a place adults had promised was safe. She built the foundation because she believed safety should be built, not advertised. That night, she watched my mother silence her phone for the 3rd time. Then my father's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, and pressed decline. Marion leaned toward my mother. "Is everything all right?" My mother smiled. "Just my younger daughter. Nora has a way of needing attention whenever Celeste has something important." Marion's expression did not change. "Is Nora here tonight?" "Oh, no. She's having a small procedure." "A small procedure." My mother said that while I was under anesthesia. On stage, the presenter began speaking about Celeste. Her collection, Rooms That Hold Them, asks a simple question. What does a child need within reach? Within reach. At the hospital, Sophie's inhaler was not within reach. It was under my mother's chair, inside a cream purse. When they announced Celeste's name, my parents rose first. Celeste walked to the stage, silver dress catching the light. She accepted the glass trophy and waited for applause to soften. "I'm overwhelmed," she said. She was not. Celeste had rehearsed overwhelmed. She thanked the judges, her team, the craftspeople, her parents. "My parents taught me that children deserve to feel seen," she said. My mother put a hand over her heart. Then Celeste said the sentence that would later destroy the room. "Every child deserves to feel within reach of love." My father's phone buzzed again. This time he looked down long enough to see the caller ID. North Valley Medical Center. He stood and walked toward the exit. In the hallway, a nurse told him Sophie had been treated for an asthma attack. A hospital security officer needed to speak with him. His grandson had called 911. The children had reported being left alone. My father returned to the ballroom with the expression of a man trying to hide smoke behind a closed door. He leaned toward my mother. "The boy called 911. Elaine's face went white. "What?" "Sophie had an attack. They know we left." Celeste stepped down from the stage to more applause and came directly to the table, trophy in hand. What happened? My father whispered. Caleb called 911 from the hospital. Celeste's smile faltered. Is Sophie okay? She asked. For half a second, she sounded like my sister. Then her eyes moved past my father, toward the photographers gathering near the sponsor wall. Did anyone here find out? My mother grabbed her purse. We need to go. Celeste looked toward the photographers. Mom, if you and Dad leave now, everyone will ask why. My father said, Celeste, please, she whispered. Just 10 more minutes. I have the sponsor photos. Marion is still here. If you disappear now, people will talk. There are moments when selfishness wears horns. And there are moments when it wears perfume and says please. My mother sat back down. After the category photos, she said. My father hesitated. Then he sat too. Marion Vale saw enough. She had been close enough to hear the words hospital, 911, and after the sponsor photos. She saw the panic. The choice. The way my parents looked toward the exit and then stayed seated. The way Celeste's hand tightened around her trophy like it mattered more than whatever had made them want to leave. Photographers called Celeste's name. My sister stood beneath the words rooms that hold them while my parents arranged themselves on either side of her. My mother's purse hung from her arm. Inside it was Sophie's inhaler. At the hospital, Sophie was breathing through a mask. Mia was shaking. Caleb was answering questions from adults with badges. And my family was posing for pictures. When the photos ended, Marion approached my mother. What child had to call emergency services tonight? My mother froze. My father said, it's a family misunderstanding. Marion looked at the trophy in Celeste's hand. Then at my mother's purse. No, she said quietly. A child calling emergency services is rarely a misunderstanding. My mother's voice sharpened. With respect, Marion, you don't know our family. Marion's face was calm. That is becoming very clear. My parents left after that, not in a rush. Not with the speed of grandparents terrified for their grandchildren. They left with the stiff dignity of people, angry that a private failure had become visible. By the time they reached the hospital, I was waking up. By the time I learned the truth, Celeste's acceptance speech had already been posted online. The caption read, "Every child deserves to feel within reach of love." None of them knew that on the same night, her nephew had used a paper wristband to call for help because the adults in his family had moved love out of reach. And if you're still listening to this, tell me honestly in the comments, if you were Nora, would this be the moment you cut them off, or would you wait to hear their apology first? Because what happened next proved that some people do not apologize when they are wrong. They only panic when they are exposed. When my parents walked into the hospital corridor, Caleb saw them before I did. I felt his body change beside me. He had been leaning carefully against my bed, one hand resting on the blanket near my hip, not touching the incision, just close enough to know I was real. Then his fingers curled. I followed his gaze. Richard and Elaine stood under the harsh hallway lights, dressed like they had entered the wrong building by mistake. My father's tie was still perfect. My mother's lipstick had barely faded. The gold guest badge from the Veil Design Awards shone on her coat. Gold badge. Cream purse. Sophie's breath. Mia slid off her chair and moved behind the nurse. Sophie turned her face away. Mia had always been the child who forgave fastest. If someone forgot her drawing, she made another one. If someone missed her school performance, she saved them a program anyway. But that night, when my mother opened her arms, Mia did not run into them. She pressed herself behind the nurse's leg and held Button so tightly one of the rabbit's stitched ears folded backward. "Grandma said she was coming back," Mia whispered. My mother heard her. We all did. For a second, something like shame moved across Elaine's face. Then pride covered it again. "I did come back," she said. Mia looked at the oxygen tube under Sophie's nose. Too late. That was the first punishment my parents received. Not the report. Not public shame. The way their grandchildren looked at them and no longer saw safety. My mother's open arms lowered. "Nora," my father said. "This has been blown out of proportion." I stared at him. I had imagined many first words. "I'm sorry. Is Sophie okay?" "Caleb, you did the right thing. We failed you." But my father chose defense before remorse. "Blown out of proportion," I said. My mother stepped forward. "We were gone for a short while. Almost 2 hours. We were in the same city. My daughter couldn't breathe. She was in a hospital." That sentence, as if proximity to help excused abandoning a child to need it, as if the building was the caregiver, as if walls could love. Caleb whispered, "You said you'd come back." My mother looked at him then. Not as a frightened child. As a problem. We would have, sweetheart. But you panicked before we had a chance. I lifted my hand. Don't speak to him like that. Elaine blinked. Nora, I'm trying to calm him. No. You're trying to make him responsible for what you did. My father sighed. This is exactly why we didn't want to upset you right after surgery. You didn't want to upset me? My son had to call 911 because you abandoned my children. We did not abandon them. What do you call leaving 3 children alone in a cafe? We asked Caleb to watch them for a few minutes. He is 10. When you were 10, you were perfectly capable. I laughed once. Yes, I know. You trained me early too. My father's face tightened. This is not the time for childhood grievances. No. This is the time for my children's safety. My mother's eyes filled with tears. For one wild second, I thought they were real. Then she said, Celeste needed us tonight. There it was. The truth. Undressed. Not an emergency. Not confusion. Not a mistake. A choice. Celeste needed us. I looked at my children. Mia was still behind the nurse. Sophie clutched the edge of her blanket. Caleb stood too straight. Like if he held himself still enough, the adults might stop breaking things. Celeste needed you, I said slowly. Sophie needed to breathe. My mother flinched. That is unfair. No. What's unfair is my daughter gasping for air while her medicine was in your purse. The room went silent. The nurse opened a clear plastic bag from the counter. Inside was Sophie's emergency pouch. The black marker was still visible. Sophie asthma. Emergency inhaler inside. The nurse said carefully. It was returned by Mrs. Bennett when hospital staff asked whether there were additional medications. My mother's cheeks flushed. I was keeping it safe. My voice dropped. From who? No answer. From Sophie? Still no answer. Caleb looked at the bag. His face crumpled. I looked everywhere, he whispered. I turned to him immediately. Caleb, listen to me. This was not your fault. But if I found it faster? No. If I called sooner? No. If I went with Grandma? No. My body screamed as I shifted closer to him, but I needed him to hear me as his mother. You saved your sister. Do you understand me? You saved Sophie. Tears spilled over his cheeks. I was scared to leave Mia. You made the best choice you could, when adults gave you impossible choices. He looked at my mother when I said adults. So did I. A hospital security officer stepped into the doorway. Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, we need to complete your statements. My father straightened. Oh, statements? Yes, sir. This is a private family matter. Dana spoke from behind him. Not anymore. My mother looked at me with betrayal in her eyes. As if I had done this to her. As if my unconscious body had orchestrated her humiliation. But the truth was worse for her. A child had told the truth. And children are dangerous witnesses, because they do not yet know which lies are supposed to be polite. Later that night, after the children were settled in a family room near recovery, Dana came back. She explained that a formal report had been made because minors had been left unattended and one child experienced a medical emergency. I did not argue. Do what you need to do, I said. Dana seemed surprised. Some families prefer to handle things internally. I looked through the glass wall at Caleb asleep in a chair, Mia curled against his side, Sophie breathing steadily under a blanket. My family has handled things internally for 35 years, I said. That's how we got here. Before Dana left, she placed something on my bedside table. Caleb's visitor band had been replaced because the first one had torn. The old paper band sat there, wrinkled and soft from his sweating wrist. He asked me to give this to you, she said. He said it had your name on it. When I touched it, I started crying again. Not loudly. Just the kind of crying that happens when your heart finally understands what your mind has already been told. My son had used a paper bracelet as a lifeline, and my mother had used a purse as a hiding place for breath. That was the night my family split into 2 groups forever. The people who left. And the people who stayed. The first lie appeared before I even left the hospital. Celeste posted a photo from the awards ceremony at 11:48 p.m. She stood beneath the words, "Rooms that hold them," holding her glass trophy, my parents on either side of her. The caption read, "Tonight reminded me that love, safety, and family are the foundations of every beautiful room. So grateful for those who stand beside me in the light. Stand beside me in the light." I read it from my hospital bed, while Sophie slept beside me, and Caleb woke up every 20 minutes to check if she was still breathing. My first instinct was to ignore it. That was what I had been trained to do. Let Celeste shine. Let my parents rewrite. Let myself become the difficult daughter if I objected. But Caleb had asked me one question. What if everyone thinks I lied? And that question changed everything. This time, the truth would not have to beg to be believed. By morning, my aunt called to say my mother was devastated. She says Caleb got confused and panicked, my aunt told me. Caleb called 911 because Sophie couldn't breathe. Yes, but your mother says the children were never really in danger. They were inside the hospital. There it was again. Inside the hospital. As if a child abandoned in a safe building cannot be unsafe. Then came the messages. Heard there was drama last night. Hope you didn't make Celeste's award about you. Your parents aren't perfect, but calling social services is extreme. Then Celeste herself. I know emotions are high, but I need you to understand the damage this could do. Sponsors were there. Marion was there. If people twist this, years of my work could be affected. Damage. To her work. Not to Sophie's lungs. Not to Caleb's childhood. To her work. Later that afternoon, my mother called. I almost did not answer. But Caleb was sitting at the foot of my bed, pretending to play a game on his tablet while listening to every adult sound in the room. So I answered. My mother did not say hello. Your son needs to apologize to his aunt. For a moment, I thought pain medication had distorted the words. What did you say? Caleb embarrassed this family last night. Celeste's sponsors are asking questions. Your father and I were humiliated in front of important people. I looked at Caleb. His eyes had lifted from the tablet. He called 911 because Sophie couldn't breathe. He panicked. He responded to an emergency. He is a child. Children panic. He is a child, I said. That is the entire point. My mother exhaled sharply. If you teach him that every fear deserves sirens, he will become impossible. Caleb's face went pale. Too late. The words had reached him. My mother continued. He needs to learn that panic has consequences. I ended the call. The room was silent. Caleb looked down at his tablet. His screen had gone dark. Did I ruin Aunt Celeste's award night? He asked. That was the moment I stopped being tired. Pain did not matter. Stitches did not matter. Family peace did not matter. They were trying to plant shame in the same place his courage had grown. I held out my hand. He came to me. No, I said. You did not ruin anything. Grandma said. Grandma is wrong. What if everyone thinks I lied? The question was so quiet, it nearly killed me. I looked at my son, still wearing the replacement visitor band, still too careful around my pain, and I made a decision. I asked Dana how to request the 911 recording. I asked whether the hospital report included the timeline. I asked if there were Café cameras. I asked for copies of Sophie's treatment notes. I did not ask because I wanted revenge. I asked because my son had asked if people would think he lied. That question required evidence. Over the next 2 days, the truth arrived in pieces. The call log showed 5 calls to my mother and 3 to my father before 911. My father's phone record showed 1 declined call. The Café footage showed Richard and Elaine leaving at 6:12 p.m. It showed Caleb waiting. It showed Sophie coughing. It showed Caleb standing, sitting, standing again, torn between getting help and staying with his sisters. It showed security arriving at 7:49 p.m. The hospital notes showed Sophie's oxygen level. The nurse's statement included the emergency inhaler being returned from my mother's purse. And the 911 recording, I could only listen to it once. Caleb's voice was smaller than I remembered. My mom is in surgery, he said. Please don't make me leave Mia. She's scared. The dispatcher said, You're doing very well. I don't feel like I am. Then, after a pause, Caleb whispered, My grandma said she'd come back. Another pause. She always says stuff like that. That line destroyed me. Not because it was dramatic, because it was true. Caleb stood in the doorway when the recording ended. I had not known he was there. His face was unreadable in that frightening way. Children sometimes become unreadable when they are trying not to need comfort. Do I sound scared? He asked. I closed the laptop. You sound like a child who needed help, but do I sound like I panicked? There it was again. My mother's word living in him like a splinter. I held out my hand, and after a moment, he crossed the room. Panic is running away and leaving someone behind, I said. You stayed. You called. You answered questions. That is not panic. He looked down. Then why do they keep saying it? Because if they call it panic, they don't have to call it courage. He leaned against me carefully, still afraid of hurting my stitches. I hated them for that too, for making my son gentle with everyone's wounds except his own. A day later, I received an email from Marion Vale. Miss Bennett? I witnessed part of what happened the night of your surgery. I saw your parents receive calls. I saw concern. I also saw them choose to remain for photographs, after knowing there had been an emergency involving your children. Your sister stood under my foundation's name and spoke about children feeling within reach of love. That same night, your son had to use a paper wristband to prove where he belonged. I built this award after losing a child, in a place adults promised was safe. I cannot ignore what I saw. If you ever need me to confirm the truth, I will. Marion Vale. I read it twice. For the first time, an adult outside the family had seen exactly what happened and had not asked me to make it smaller. The next morning, Celeste left a voicemail. Nora, this is getting out of hand. Marion has postponed the foundation interview. A sponsor asked whether there was a family incident at the awards. We need to present a united front. There's a private reception tomorrow for the collection installation. I want you to come. Just come, smile, and make it clear this was a misunderstanding. I played it twice, not because I was considering it, because I wanted to understand the shape of her audacity. Caleb looked up from across the room. Are they still saying I lied? I looked at the wristband, then at the inhaler pouch, then at my son. No, I said, not because they had stopped, because I was about to. The reception was held in a downtown gallery with polished concrete floors, white walls, and lighting so soft it made every object look sacred. Celeste's collection filled the center of the room. Rooms that hold them. A nursery, with rounded corners. A reading nook shaped like a cocoon. A child's bedroom with a tiny lamp designed to glow like moonlight. Everything was beautiful. That was the terrible part. Cruelty does not always build ugly things. Sometimes it builds beautiful rooms and stands inside them talking about love. I arrived alone. My body still hurt. Every step pulled at the healing places under my dress. But Caleb's question had followed me all morning. Are they still saying I lied? I could not let my son's courage be buried under Celeste's lighting design. When I entered, heads turned. My mother saw me first. Her smile appeared instantly. Nora, she said. You came. She tried to hug me. I stepped back. Her smile twitched. Don't make this awkward. It is awkward. Nora. My daughter stopped breathing while her inhaler was in your purse. Her eyes darted around. Lower your voice. That was my mother. Not worried that she had done harm. Worried that harm might become audible. My father joined us. You should not have come if you're going to be hostile. I came, because you asked me to help correct a misunderstanding. His shoulders relaxed. Good. I brought the correction. Before he could ask what I meant, Celeste swept toward us. She looked flawless. Of course she did. A pale dress. Minimal jewelry. Hair pinned loosely. The glass trophy displayed on a pedestal behind her. Nora, she said, taking both my hands before I could stop her. Thank you for coming. Her fingers were cold. Where are the kids? Somewhere safe. The words landed. Her smile thinned. I understand you're upset. No, Celeste. I don't think you do. She leaned closer. Tonight is important. There are journalists here. Sponsors. Marion. We need to show that families can have difficult nights without turning on each other. I looked around the gallery. At the miniature beds. The soft walls. The donors holding champagne. The phrases printed on display cards. A room should answer a child before the child has to ask. Is that what you think happened? I asked. A difficult night? Celeste's voice hardened beneath the silk. I think Mom and Dad made a mistake, Caleb overreacted. And now my work is being dragged into something that should have stayed private. Private. The favorite word of families with public lies? A small bell chimed. Celeste moved toward the front of the room. My parents took their places near her. I stood in the back, one hand in my coat pocket, fingers wrapped around Caleb's paper wristband. Marion Vale stood near the side wall. She saw me. She nodded once. Celeste began. Thank you all for being here to celebrate rooms that hold them. This collection was born from a belief that children need more than beauty. They need consistency. Presence. Adults who understand that safety is not a luxury. The room murmured approval. Celeste continued, This week has reminded me that family is complicated. Sometimes misunderstandings happen. Sometimes fear gets louder than truth. My body went cold. I realized then that Celeste had not invited me to make peace. She had invited me to become part of the set. The recovered sister. The grateful patient. The emotional mother who would stand in the back of the room and prove, by her silence, that nothing unforgivable had happened. Around me, people softened toward her. I saw it happen in real time. A woman near the front pressed her hand to her chest. A man from one of the sponsor tables nodded, as if Celeste had said something generous. My mother lowered her eyes at exactly the right angle. My father placed a hand on her back. They were good at this. They had always been good at turning harm into a scene where they looked wounded by the person who named it. For 1 second, I understood why I had stayed quiet for so many years. It is exhausting to tell the truth in a room already decorated for the lie. Celeste looked toward me with soft, public sadness. But I believe love means choosing grace. My mother stepped forward and took the microphone. It has been a difficult few days for our family, Elaine said. My younger daughter had surgery, and emotions ran high. My grandson is a sensitive boy. He became frightened. Nora has always been protective, and sometimes that makes children anxious too. A sound moved through the room. Sympathy, for her. For the grandmother whose grandson was apparently sensitive. Not for the child who called 911. My mother smiled gently. We are grateful everyone is fine, and we hope this private misunderstanding can stay where it belongs, inside the family. That was the end. Not of the speech. Of my silence. I walked forward. My father muttered, Nora, don't. I kept walking. Celeste's eyes widened. Nora, this is not the place, I said. The room went quiet. I reached the display table beside the child's bedroom model. A tiny wooden bed sat under a sign that read, within reach. I placed Caleb's paper wristband next to it. It looked painfully small, under the gallery lights. This belonged to my son, I said. My voice shook at first, then steadied. He was given this visitor band before my surgery so hospital staff would know he belonged with me. My mother whispered, stop. I took out my phone. When my parents left him alone in the hospital cafe with his 2 younger sisters, he used this band to read my name and room number to a 911 dispatcher. I pressed play. Caleb's voice filled the gallery. My mom is in surgery. My grandparents left. My little sister can't breathe. No one moved. The recording continued. I'm scared to leave my other sister alone. Someone gasped. The room changed. You could feel it. The moment words stopped being decoration and became evidence. I stopped the recording before the worst of it. Caleb's fear belonged to him. I would not display more of it than necessary. Then I placed Sophie's emergency pouch beside the wristband. The label faced the room. Sophie, asthma, emergency inhaler inside. This was found in my mother's purse when she returned. My mother's face collapsed. Not with remorse. With exposure. My father stepped forward. This is cruel. No, I said. Cruel was leaving them. This is just audible. Celeste's voice cracked. You are destroying me. I looked at her trophy. No, Celeste. I am refusing to let you build a brand about safe children over the sound of my son begging strangers for help. Marion Vale stepped forward. The room parted for her. She did not raise her voice. I witnessed part of that evening, Marion said. Mr. and Mrs. Bennett received calls at the awards. They were aware there had been an emergency involving the children. They remained for photographs. My mother shook her head. Marion, please. You don't understand. Marion looked at her with a grief so old and sharp it silenced the room. I built this award because I once believed a child was safe simply because adults said so. I will not let those words become decoration. Celeste whispered, this is not the place. Marion turned toward her. A room that rewards safe spaces for children is exactly the place. No one clapped. That would have been too easy. Instead, people looked away from Celeste's installation, as if beauty itself had become embarrassing. A sponsor near the front quietly removed his name card from the reserved table. A journalist stopped pretending not to take notes. Celeste stared at me with pure hatred. You could have handled this privately, she said. I did, I replied. For 35 years. My mother began crying. Nora, we are your parents. I picked up Caleb's wristband. No, I said. You are the adults who left my children. My father's voice hardened. You'll regret this. I looked at the tiny model room Celeste had built. Rounded walls, soft light, perfect safety. A room that could hold every idea except the truth. No, I said. I think this is the first thing I won't regret. Then I walked out. Behind me, the gallery stayed silent. Not because the story was over. Because the lie had lost its architecture. The fallout did not look like a movie. No one was dragged away in handcuffs. Celeste did not lose everything overnight. My parents did not fall to their knees and confess every wound they had ever caused. Real consequences are slower than that. Within weeks, the bright machinery around Celeste began to slow. The foundation postponed her campaign. A sponsor stepped back. Doors simply stopped opening as easily as they once had. Celeste called me 17 times in 2 days. I answered none. Then came the email. Not an apology. A document of injury. She wrote about her reputation, her sponsors, her team, the years she had spent building credibility. She said I had humiliated her in front of people who mattered. People who mattered. I closed the email without replying. My father sent one text. You have divided this family beyond repair. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed. No. I stopped pretending it was whole. I blocked him after that. The hospital report moved through the proper channels. Nothing dramatic enough for people who like revenge wrapped in fire, but enough to create a record. And for once, record mattered. Because my family could no longer say it did not happen. They could only say they wished it had stayed hidden. I set one boundary. Richard and Elaine would not see Caleb, Mia, or Sophie without supervision. Not until they apologized to each child. Not a family apology. Not, we're sorry everyone was upset. A real apology. To Caleb. We left you with a responsibility no child should carry. You did the right thing. We were wrong. To Mia. You should not have had to wonder if your mother was dead while adults disappeared. We were wrong. To Sophie. Your medicine should have stayed with you. You should have been able to breathe. We were wrong. My mother said that was humiliating. I said. Yes. Accountability often is. Weeks passed. My body healed slowly. Some nights the children crawled into my bed one by one, until all 4 of us slept in a crooked pile of elbows, blankets, and fear. Sophie began playing hospital with her dolls. Mia drew doors for a while. Caleb was the quietest. He went back to school. He did homework. He helped Sophie with her shoes. He had started doing small things I noticed before he did. He counted the inhalers before we left the house. He checked the battery on my phone and his. At restaurants, he chose the chair facing the entrance. When Sophie laughed too hard and coughed, his whole body turned toward her before mine did. People praised him for being responsible. They meant well. But every time someone said, "What a little man," I wanted to say, "No, he is not a little man. He is a child who was forced to stand where adults should have stood." So I stopped praising him for being grown. I praised him for playing, for sleeping late, for forgetting his shoes in the hallway, for being 10 again, even for 5 minutes at a time. One night, I found him standing outside his sister's room. "Can't sleep?" I asked. He shrugged. I sat beside him on the floor. "I know you said I don't have to be the grown-up," he said. "You don't. But what if something happens and I'm the only one who notices?" That is the hardest part of childhood fear. You can tell a child they are safe. But if they have once been right to be afraid, they know safety is not a sentence, it is proof repeated over time. So I did not promise nothing bad would ever happen. I said, "Then you tell me. And if I can't answer, there will be other adults who will. But you will not be left alone to solve it." He looked down. "What if people leave again?" I took his hand. "Then we don't chase them. We stay with the people who stayed with us." A month later, when I was strong enough, I took the children back to North Valley Medical Center. Not for treatment. To say thank you. Carla, the nurse who had helped Sophie, met us near the lobby. The cafe barista came out from behind the counter when she saw Caleb. Her eyes filled before she could speak. "I should have noticed," she said. Caleb looked uncomfortable. "It's okay." "No," she said gently. "You deserved adults who noticed." That sentence did something my family's excuses never could. It gave the responsibility back to the grown-ups. The dispatcher could not meet us in person, but she sent a note through Dana. Caleb opened it in the car. It said, "Dear Caleb, you were calm when it mattered, scared when anyone would have been scared, and brave in the way brave people usually are because someone needed help and you chose to call. You did exactly right." He read it 3 times. That evening, Sophie gave him a drawing. It showed 3 stick-figure children in a hospital cafe. One had a big white band around his wrist. Above him, in crooked purple letters, Sophie had written, "My brother called for help." Caleb stared at it. His eyes filled. Sophie climbed into his lap. "You evaded me," she said. Caleb hugged her carefully. "I was scared," he whispered. Sophie nodded against his shirt. "Me too." Later that night, I found the original paper wristband in my bedside drawer. The one Caleb had worn. The one with my name and recovery room printed across it. I placed it in a small wooden box. Beside it, I put a copy of Sophie's drawing and the dispatcher's note. For a long time, I just sat there. I thought about Celeste's gallery. All those perfect rooms built to hold children. Then I looked down the hall at my imperfect home. Laundry on the chair, crayons under the table, medicine labels on every backpack, a nightlight in the hallway. 3 children breathing. This was the room that held them. Not because it was beautiful, because no one in it had to earn the right to be protected. Months later, my mother sent one final letter. Handwritten, 4 pages. In it she said she missed the children. She said families should not break over one bad night. One bad night. I turned the letter over and wrote on the back. A bad night is when traffic makes you late. A bad night is when dinner burns. A bad night is when a dress tears before a ceremony. Leaving children alone during their mother's surgery is not a bad night. It is a truth. And until you can name it correctly, you cannot come near them. I mailed it back. No more letters came. Maybe someday they will learn the difference between shame and remorse. Maybe someday they won't. That is no longer the center of my life. The center of my life is Caleb laughing again without checking the room first. Mia drawing windows instead of doors. Sophie shouting front pocket every time we pack her inhaler. And me, learning slowly that protecting my peace does not make me cruel. It makes me awake. I do not spend every day hating them. But I also do not hand my children back to people who only regret being seen. Forgiveness, if it ever comes, will not be a key to my front door. It will not erase the cafe. It will not erase Caleb's voice saying, "Nobody knows we're alone." And it will not put Sophie's breath back within reach. They didn't have them. Caleb did. My 10-year-old son, with a paper wristband and a dying phone battery, had more courage than every adult who left that hospital. My parents thought the worst thing that happened that night was Caleb calling 911. They were wrong. The worst thing was that he had to. And once he spoke, no one could decorate the truth again. If this story stayed with you, tell me where you're watching from tonight. And tell me honestly, would you ever open the door again to grandparents who left your children alone while you were fighting for your life?